Yani Madad, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Farkhanda Niazi, and I currently serve with the National Settlement Portfolio of Smiley Council for Canada as Communications Lead. Before we begin today's session, I'd like to speak a little bit about the newcomer services we provide within the institution. The settlement portfolio of the National Council for Canada provides support to Jamaati newcomers to Canada. Jamaati members who have recently arrived or have a confirmation of entry to Canada are encouraged to register with Settlement Portfolio at iicanada.org/newly arrived card. I will actually write that in the chat in case you want to keep a note of that. Newcomers will receive a one-on-one guidance and support through their early years in Canada for successful settlement. Our team will connect newcomers to institutional services and to settlement agencies for government benefits and programs. You can also view or download the settlement guide for Smiley newcomers and visit II Canada's New Immigrants page for more information. Thank you very much again for joining this informative webinar on important changes announced by Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada on the processes for establishing permanent residence. Now I'm going to share with you a little bit about our today's speaker, Zia Samar. Zia Samar's law practice encompasses all areas of economic immigration, through temporary and permanent residence applications, in addition to citizenship. She conducts informational presentations on immigration programs and has been invited to present across Canada and the United States. Zia is an active member of Canada's legal and immigration communities. She stands as the Citizenship and Immigration Lead and Subject Matter Expert for the Settlement Portfolio of the Council for Ontario and the National Settlement Portfolio of the Smiley Council for Canada. Zia has volunteered for the Organization for Refugee Asylum and Migration in San Francisco and acted as the lead board member with the Regional Disaster Management Team for Focus Canada. Now, there will be a question and answer button on the bottom of your Zoom screen. After Zia's presentation, we will be taking your questions. Thank you. Zia?
Thank you, Farkhanda. Yalim, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It is a very important and a very exciting topic. So basically, like Farkhanda said, we're going to be talking about the new temporary policies that have been announced by Immigration, Citizenship, and Refugees. So last week, and let me just share my presentation here. So what happened was on April 14th, IRCC announced 4 policies for new pathways to permanent residence for temporary residents that are in Canada. These are very exciting. They're not ones that we've seen recently in the past. And so definitely we're very excited about the opportunity for applying for permanent residence. These streams are going to be open from May 6th until November 5th, or until they've reached their maximum capacity. So basically, IRCC will be accepting up to 90,000 applications on the English side stream. So we have a total of 4 policies that were announced. 2 of them are for individuals who are fluent in English, and 2 of those policies are for individuals who are fluent on the French side. And so we don't see a cap, so there won't be a maximum number of applications that IRCC will accept for individuals who are fluent in French. However, there is a cap on the English side. So for individuals who are using English language test results, IRCC will accept a maximum of 90,000 applications across the different streams. And we'll talk about the streams in a moment. Across all 4 of these policies, we do see requirements that are standard and apply to all 4. So first, you do need to be currently employed in Canada. And IRCC is looking specifically for individuals who are in an employment relationship. And so if you're self-employed, these particular positions, individuals who are self-employed, unless you're working as a physician, will not qualify for this program. Now, it's very important to understand that IRCC has only said that you need to be currently employed. There's no requirement in terms of the actual occupation code, whether it's part-time, full-time, whether it's a permanent position or a temporary contract. None of that is written into the requirements. IRCC is only saying that you do need to be employed at the time of application. Related to that, you do need to either have a valid work permit or be authorized to work in Canada. And that's a very important note, right? We see that IRCC is saying not only that, they're not only accepting people who have a work permit, but they're also accepting individuals who have the authorization to be working in Canada. And so the reason that there's that distinction there is that they're specifically saying that if you have the ability to legally work in Canada, then you can also qualify for this program. And so what we see as being included here are international students, right? So individuals who are here studying in their programs, they still have the authorization to work on their study permits. And that authorization to work doesn't require a separate work permit anymore. And so IRCC is specifically including these individuals and saying that, okay, you have the authorization to work, and so you're also may be able to use and benefit from these policies to apply for permanent residence. You do need to have status at the time of your application or be eligible to restore your status. And very important, you need to physically be in Canada both at the time of your application and when your permanent residence is approved. Okay, so IRCC is specifically looking at individuals who are in Canada. Okay, now these policies are also only for individuals who have an intent to reside outside of Quebec, and this is a general requirement we do see with a lot of the federal programs because Quebec does have its own system when we're talking about applying for permanent residence. So there is that intent requirement here too, to be wanting to live outside of Quebec. Now, I mentioned that there are 4 policies, okay? And we said of those 4, 2 are specific to the English-speaking side and 2 are specific to the French speakers. Now, the 2 English and the 2 French basically mirror each other. And so the way that we can break it down to really understand the policies is that there's a policy for students who have completed their studies in Canada, and then there's a separate policy for individuals who have worked in what's called an essential occupation and are thereby eligible to apply for permanent residence right now. And so we'll look at each of those separately. So let's first talk about the routes for students. So IRCC is looking at international students who have completed an eligible program of study at a designated learning institution in or after January 2017. And so that means that we're looking at individuals who have finished their program of study within the past 4 years. Now, really important to recognize that IRCC has delineated exactly which programs and what schools will qualify an individual to apply through this program. So when we're talking about the schools, IRCC says that it has to be a designated learning institution, and it basically mirrors the requirements for applying for a postgrad work permit. So the schools that qualify students to get a postgrad work permit will also qualify them for this particular program. Turning over to the program side, there's 3 ways. There's 3 different types of programs that will qualify an individual. Either an applicant has completed a degree, and when we say degree, we're talking about either a bachelor's, a master's, or a PhD, or an individual has completed a non-degree program of any length, as long as it leads to an occupation in a listed occupation of Annex A. So this particular public policy has an annex attached to it, which lists specific skilled trades. So if your program of study leads to working in one of those skilled trades, then regardless of whether you've done a degree program, a non-degree program, regardless of the length of the program, that specific completion will qualify you to apply. Third, if you have done one or more non-degree programs, so long as the cumulative length of your study in Canada was at least 2 years, then you are also eligible. And so this includes individuals who have potentially done 2 one-year diploma programs, for example. Because the 2 one-year programs leads to a total of at least 2 years, then you would be eligible to apply through this particular stream. Importantly, throughout your entire study in Canada, you do need to have held authorization to study. So if you did a one-year program, you needed to have your study, a valid study permit throughout that entire program. On the English-speaking side, it's the IELTS or the CELPIP test that IRCC will accept. And on the French-speaking side, it's the TEF or TCF tests that IRCC will accept. For the IELTS and the CELPIP, it does need to be the general version of the test. And the minimum score in each of the categories, so reading, writing, speaking, and listening, is a minimum of CLB 5 for the students. Okay. But aside from these criteria, we only have to worry about the general requirements, which we talked about before. So being currently employed, having authorization to work at the time of application. These are the full requirements for the international student stream. Now, if you remember at the beginning, we said that there is a maximum cap. So on the English-speaking side, IRCC will accept a total of 40,000 applications. But again, on the French-speaking side, we aren't seeing any quotas. And so these programs for French speakers may stay open until November 5th. Of course, IRCC does reserve the right to close them early. And so certainly if you do qualify, I would recommend applying as soon as possible and not waiting until that November 5th deadline. So let's turn over to the essential workers. This policy requires at least 1 year of work experience in the past 3 years. Now, when we say that you need 1 year of work experience, we can break that down into 2 parts. So you need to have at least 1 calendar year of experience, and you also need to have a total of 1,560 hours. Okay, so both of these are important. And so the reason that I emphasize both of these requirements is that the 1,560 hours, when we break it up over a year, it's equivalent to 30 hours a week. And so a question I often get is, if I work 60 hours a week, can I qualify in 6 months? And unfortunately, the answer is no. And that's why we see that it's a 2-part definition when we talk about 1 year of work experience. You do need to have that 12 calendar months, and at the same time, you do have to have at least a total of 1,560 hours. Now, with the essential workers side, there are 2 streams. Stream A is for individuals with work experience in one or more of the occupations listed in Annex A of this particular public policy. And so Annex A really deals with health-related occupations. A majority of them are high-skilled, but we also do see a couple low-skilled occupations included in Annex A. So some examples are dental assistants, nurse aides, personal support workers, and the other assisting occupations in health services are all included in Annex A and would qualify an individual to apply under Stream A of the Essential Worker Policy. Stream B allows for individuals who have either work experience in Annex B or a combination of work experience in the occupations listed in Annex A and Annex B. So Annex B is a list of 95 other essential occupations. A lot of low-skilled occupations, or what are traditionally considered low-skilled occupations from IRCC, are included in this list. And we see a lot of frontline workers that we have become very dependent on over the last year included in Annex B. So certain occupations such as cashiers, bus drivers, shelf stockers, farm workers, retail salespersons, cleaners, they're all included in Annex B. So if you have at least 1 year of experience in one of these occupations in the last 3 years, you may be able to apply through this program. Now, of course, the work experience does need to have been authorized. So you did need to have authorization in Canada in order to work in them. And again, we see that you can't have been self-employed when you were completing that year of work experience. There is also a language component with the essential workers policies. On the again, same tests that we're accepting, that IRCC is accepting, the IELTS, CELPIP for English, TEF, and TCF for the French-speaking side, but the language requirement is lower. So you need to meet a minimum of CLB 4 in each of the 4 categories, okay? For Stream A, there's a maximum cap of 20,000 applications that IRCC will accept, and on Stream B, there's a maximum cap of 30,000 applications. And so once these are met, once these quotas are met, IRCC will be closing these programs for the English-speaking side. Like I said, the French will stay open, but the English-speaking side will close down. Now, I know a question we're going to get soon is, how fast are these going to close? And the reality is that right now we just don't know. It will really depend on many factors and how IRCC actually implements these programs on May 6th. The best advice I can give right now is to be prepared, okay? While IRCC has not yet released information in terms of the process, the documents, how they're going to be accepting applications, you can still prepare yourself. You can prepare yourself by thinking about what it is, what the eligibility criteria is for those programs, and having your documents ready. And when I say documents, I mean general documents that IRCC would generally require, like your passports, for example. If you're an international student and applying through the international student stream, being able to prove that you've completed that program of study in Canada. If you're applying through the essential worker stream, being able to prove that you've completed that year of work experience in Canada. All of these will be important because IRCC will not, like I said, they're going to close very quickly. And so you want to make sure that if you're relying on the English language test, that you're ready to apply right on May 6th, because we don't think that these programs, unfortunately, are going to stay open very long. And then with that, I'll open it up to questions. Farkhunda, do we have questions?
Yes, we do. So the first question that I've got is, does casual work count?
So yeah, when we look at both the essential worker stream, all it says is that you need to have a year of work experience, and there's no requirement that it's continuous or with a single employer or even in a single occupation. So you can certainly combine different positions, different employers, together, as long as it is within the past 3 years, you can combine them to get that total year of work experience that you need.
Thank you. And if they're eligible to apply in essential workers, such as cashier stream, then in that case, can they apply if they have not graduated?
Yeah, so the essential workers program does not require that you've completed a program of study in Canada. So certainly if you qualify in the essential workers and you're still studying, that could allow you to apply for permanent residence, right? An important note I'll make here, and I get this question a lot with students, is that if you're finishing your program of study right now, you could still be eligible. It will come down to a timing issue, unfortunately. So for the international student stream, part of the requirements, like we talked about, is that you've completed your program of study and you have authorization right now to work in Canada. On a study permit, you are able to work until you receive confirmation that you've completed your program of study. At that point, you're no longer able to work on your study permit. But as an international student, you can apply for your postgrad work permit. And as soon as you apply for your postgrad work permit, assuming you meet the conditions, you would be able to resume working and start working full-time, in fact. And so as long as you're able to apply for your postgrad work permit, you would again regain your authorization to work in Canada and then be able to apply under the international student stream. So it does become, unfortunately, a bit of a timing issue depending on when schools issue your letter of completion and whether you're able to apply for that postgrad work permit in time. But if all the stars line up and you are able to do that, then you would still be able to apply for the international student stream as well.
Thank you. So the participant asks that they have tourist visa for Canada. Is it possible for them to convert it to visitor visa, the visitor visa, into work permit if they travel to Canada?
Yeah, so there is the ability to change visitor status or visitor records to work permits. Now, again, on the day that you apply, you would need to have authorization to work in Canada. So that may not be possible between now and May 6th. Generally, yes, there is the ability, but whether or not you're going to have that done before May 6th so that you have the eligibility to apply, I can't say. If you're on the French speaking side, yes, you may have till November, and so that might work for you.
Thank you. Would a family that's here on an LMIA qualify for this initiative?
Yeah, so LMIAs, if you have like the LMIA is the first step, then you get the work permit after it. If you do have the work permit and you meet one of the two programs, then yes, you'd be able to apply for permanent residence.
Okay, thank you. And what is the best way to apply for this as the only member in the US? Rest of the family is in Canada, and this person has a qualification in hospitality and teacher.
So keep in mind, these programs are for individuals who are here in Canada right now. So if you're in the States, this wouldn't be, unfortunately, the program for you, but certainly there are other programs that can be explored.
Thank you. The LMIA is for NOC 6311, Food Services Supervisor. Would that qualify?
Yes, so you'll have to take a look at the essential on Annex B. Generally, the supervisor roles are not included in that because they do have the ability to apply through like CC, for example, or other pathways to permanent residence, but you can always double check the Annex B.
Thank you. Do room attendants count?
So I haven't memorized the full 95 occupations. My best recommendation would be to take a look at Annex B to see if your occupation is listed there.
Okay. An attendee is actually asking about whether or not they need a medical examination. What other documents do we need for that?
Yeah, so
stream.
At this time, IRCC has not released the full list of documents and the forms that they're going to require on May 6th when you apply. Now, at the same time, I do think that medicals may be a part of it because, for example, when we see people applying through Canadian Experience class, medicals are a mandatory document or mandatory. It is mandatory that you've completed your medicals before you can apply. Personally, I think that this will mirror that and you'll still have to have your medicals done before you can submit. But of course, again, right now it's just an opinion. Unfortunately, we don't have that full list from IRCC as yet.
Thank you. And participants asking about if I have not finished my degree, but I have accumulated the 1,560 hours within the last 3 years, do I qualify?
You may, yeah, you may still be able to apply, but you'd be looking at the essential workers stream instead of the student stream.
They have mentioned they have actually in the essential.
Perfect, yeah, so then that would be the one that you'd be looking at.
Can professionals from overseas apply for this program?
No, unfortunately, this is for individuals in Canada.
Thank you. I'm a student and I'm going to complete my business administration diploma in June. Can I apply or am I eligible?
So if you qualify under the essential worker stream, that might be one that you can look at. But again, it's difficult to say, whenever we're talking about an individual's qualification and whether a particular individual can apply, it's always best to speak to a professional personally to evaluate your circumstances. Immigration is not a one size fits all, and it is really important to be looking at that particular circumstance to see, okay, can I qualify for this? Is this the best route for me? So that's something that I would recommend speaking with a professional one-on-one about. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question is about salary. So somebody has asked about how they have, their salary keep fluctuating and whether or not that affects the application for them to qualify.
No, so we don't see anything about salary requirements in the eligibility criteria.
Okay.
So it doesn't.
Thank you very much. Does it matter whether the current employment is high or high or low skilled? What about part-time or full-time?
None of that is a problem. So you can be working in a high skilled right now, low skilled occupation, part-time, full-time. For individuals applying through the essential worker stream, your current employment doesn't even need to be in the same occupation that has qualified you for the essential workers program. So you can have previous work experience in one of the listed occupations in Annex B, for example, and your current occupation doesn't necessarily have to be listed there.
Thank you. A participant is asked about how law says that the essential stream, the hours must be 1,556, 30 hours per week, but I have worked about 20 hours per week. So do I qualify or can I apply?
So if you've worked 20 hours a week, that means that you'll need to have worked more than the calendar year, right? Because this is why we broke it up into two parts. We said you need to have at least one calendar year, and you need to also have at least 1,560 hours. So if you're working, for example, 15 hours a week, it would take you a year and a half to get that full 1,560 hours. And so instead of needing, your qualification would be after that year and a half, since that would be the point when you would accumulate your 1,560 hours.
Another question is about parents. So parents living in Canada under super visa, can they apply through this route?
So if you're on a super visa, you're probably here on visitor status, which would mean that you can't qualify because you don't have authorization to work here. If they do have a work permit, and anyone who's here that meets the general requirements along with the requirements for either the student stream or the essential worker stream can qualify and can apply.
Thank you very much. Another international student is asking about, they have completed their accounting degree, but they have not taken the IELTS test. So, they're already available until summertime. So how do I meet that requirement?
That's definitely a problem right now. So as soon as these programs were announced on April 14th, we saw that the IELTS and the CELPIP websites both went down because there was such a high number of people that were trying to book tests right away. Both IELTS and CELPIP have announced that they are constantly adding additional tests and adding additional seats for the tests that they already have. And so my advice really there is to continue looking, keep trying on their websites, see if you are able to get a date, because the language tests are going to be mandatory, right? So on the day that you apply, you do have to have taken your test and received your results.
Thank you. An individual has a work permit and they have worked for 1 year at a gas station. Are they eligible? Can they apply?
So again, this means going back to that Annex B, right, and taking a look at the listed occupations there.
Thank you very much. Is there any restriction with regards to the number of days that we have stayed in Canada to apply for this?
No, as long as you meet the requirements for either the student stream or the essential workers, right? So it inherently brings in a requirement because you do have to have either finished a program here or worked in Canada for a year, right? So either way, there is going to be that you would have had been here already for a period of time. but there's nothing set out in the requirements to say, okay, you need to have 365 days in Canada, for example.
Mhm. Thank you very much. Does an international student, do they need a completion letter and PGWP to be able to apply under this?
So this goes back to being eligible to work in Canada. International students who are finishing their program of study, like I said, it is going to be a matter of timing. So you do need to have authorization to work at the time that you're applying for your permanent residence. And so that if you're finishing your program of study, that means that you need to have applied for that postgrad work permit or have other authorization to work.
Thank you. I have another question about the essential workers. So they are home caregiver, but they have applied for extension of their work permit, but they have not heard back. So do they qualify to apply through this route?
Yeah, so as long as you have applied on time and properly for your work permit extension, then you will have maintained your status. You would hold implied status right now. That is a form, that is authorization to work in Canada. So if you're on implied status, that still qualifies you to work and would qualify you to apply for permanent residence through these programs.
Thank you. I'm not sure what PCC stands for, but they're asking, how can I get PCC done before the request?
So for the police certificates, certainly, yeah, certainly the immigration lingo, right? With the police certificates, again, we don't know for sure that they're going to be required. For express entry, they are, and so again, we may think that they'll come up as being part of these applications. It's a tight timeline, right? There's no easy way to get everything done in the next week. But I think if you're not able to get a certain document, like the police certificate, you do want to, at the minimum, show that you've made best efforts to obtain that document and put that as part of the application. Now, of course, again, we're still waiting to receive the full guide from IRCC. And so in there, we'll be able to determine whether, one, what the documents are that they'll need, and two, if they'll accept applications that have applied for a police certificate but haven't received it as yet.
Thank you. They have applied for permanent resident previously, but they have not heard from the IRCC. So should they apply through this route again?
You certainly can. I mean, there's nothing restricting you from applying through different categories. So for example, you could have submitted an application through a provincial program or through Canadian Experience Class, for example, and you haven't received a decision as yet. You can also apply for permanent residence through one of these public policies. Now, you only get permanent residence once. So, even if you've submitted multiple applications, you'll only get a decision on one.
Thank you. Do I need a RCMP check with fingerprints?
So generally, IRCC never requires an RCMP check for the initial application. Basically, if they do want one, if the officer does want one, they generally will come back and request it from the applicant. So usually not a requirement.
Thank you. And do the application include educational qualifications? And if so, what are the qualifications that are required?
Yeah, so it just depends on the stream you're applying through. If you're applying through the essential worker streams, there's no education requirement as part of the eligibility criteria. If you're applying through the student stream, then yes, because the program does require that you've completed at least, you would have to have completed a program in Canada in or after January 2017.
Thank you. A student is actually asking that they do have the 1,560 hours work experience, but they have worked as a teller. So do they qualify? Can they apply?
Again, we'll have to refer back to that Annex B list to see if that's included in one of the occupations.
Okay. And when applying for permanent for citizenship after going through permanent residency, how long is the application process, and do I have to be in the country while waiting for citizenship? Sorry, it's about citizenship.
That's okay. With citizenship, and of course, we haven't gone through all the requirements or anything here today. Citizenship generally does require at least 3 years as a permanent resident. If you've spent time here as a temporary resident, that can count towards it. It gives you a maximum credit of up to a year. Basically, it's every day that you've spent as a temporary resident counts as half a day up to a maximum credit of a year. And then, no, you don't necessarily have to be in Canada throughout the entire application process.
Thank you. I have a question about refugees. So if one has refugee status currently and have a work permit, can they apply through this program for PR?
Unfortunately, no. So this is why if we go back to the general requirements, we have the requirement to not only have a work permit or be authorized to work in Canada, but also to have temporary residence status. So as a refugee, yes, you're given a work permit, but you'll see a notation at the bottom of that work permit that specifically states that it does not confer temporary residence status. And so because of that, you wouldn't be eligible to apply for permanent residence through these programs.
Thank you. We have a question about how they work as an essential worker, but they're only they currently have 20 hours per week of work experience, so they don't fulfill that requirement. Do you think they can apply?
Well, the requirement, it doesn't talk about how many hours you have to work per week, right? We're looking again at the total number of hours that you have. You need to have a total of at least 1 year of experience, which is equivalent to the 1,560. It doesn't exclude people who have worked part-time from qualifying. Right. So if you have worked 20 hours a week consistently, yes, you won't qualify at that exact 1 year mark because you won't have hit the 1,560 hours. But when you do hit the 1,560, that point in time, you would qualify even though you were working part-time throughout.
Thank you very much. Do you know how long the graduates program will remain open after the announcement in early May?
Personally, I do think that the international student stream is going to close the fastest. It is the one with the largest number, so they are accepting 40,000, but I do think that we're going to see that one close first. And of course, these are just my opinions and my hypotheses, but I personally don't think that any of these streams are going to stay open very long.
If one has applied under the Caregiver Pilot Program and the application has not been processed and is still in progress, should they apply under this program again?
Whether you should or shouldn't, I wouldn't be able to answer that here. I don't know. It really does depend on your own personal background and your circumstances, but certainly applying through a different program for permanent residence doesn't exclude you from applying also through this program.
Thank you. And I have a few questions about the fees. So they're saying that, whether or not the fee will be refunded, particularly for those who have actually applied already. So they'll be paying for the second time.
So when you look at the IRCC processing fees, it breaks down into two different parts. So there's the processing fee, and there's also a right to permanent residence fee. For example, when you apply through Express Entry, so through Canadian Experience Class, for example, you pay both of those at the same time. I expect that it's going to be very similar with this program. You're going to have to pay both the fees together. Now, the processing fee itself is generally not refunded because the processing will have generally started. The right to permanent residence fee, that could be refunded because, again, you won't have received permanent residence through two different streams.
Thank you very much. Another question is about how long is this going to take for them to receive an invitation if they've been selected?
So this is not an invitation process, right? When we talk about Express Entry and the programs that fall into the Express Entry system, that's the invitation process. That's where we see an invitation process where you have to create a profile and go into a pool of applicants and then be invited to apply for permanent residence. This program is more of a first come, first served basis. So when the program opens on May 6th, it's going to be the first 90,000 people on the English side that are able to upload and submit their applications that will be processed. Okay, so this is why I said my advice is really to be as prepared as you can be, because I don't think that this is going to stay open very long. IRCC has confirmed that they are looking solely at the number of applications that they receive. So it's not about, they're not going to evaluate to say, okay, do we have 90,000 complete applications or 90,000 people that qualify? It's solely about, have they received 90,000 applications?
Thank you very much. And do they require financial documentation from an employer?
No, so this program does not have a component for savings or for a minimum salary component. So none of that is part of it. So we shouldn't see anything like that on the document list. With that being said, you do have to be currently employed. And when we say you have to be currently employed, the definition of work is a paid position. So you do have to be working somewhere where you are receiving a salary, but the exact salary, the exact position, again, whether it's full-time or part-time, high-skilled or low-skilled, none of that is imperative to this application.
Thank you. And if an applicant is eligible for both the streams, international student and essential worker, which one is the best stream for them to apply?
Whichever one is open and that they can apply through. If you can, yeah, it really comes down to whatever you're able to submit through when you're online. Both of them are supposed to be processed. Well, right now, IRCC has not released how long the processing time they're expecting for these programs. With that being said, though, this was supposed to be a response to IRCC being able to meet their targets for this year. And so we do, a lot of the discussion is that this may be towards getting a decision by the end of the year. Again, that's just opinion. And of course, it is more complex than that because they do have many different streams to process and many different promises. But I think that's part of their goal here is to process a lot of these by the end of the year.
Thank you. What if the applicant's work permit expire during the application processing? And will that, while applying through the public policies, qualify them for an open bridge work permit?
That is a great question. We don't know right now. The short answer is that right now IRCC has not disclosed whether or not they're going to have a particular work permit that an individual who's applying for permanent residence through these streams will qualify for. When we look at express entry programs, applicants who are in Canada and have a work permit can apply to extend their work permits through a program, through what's called a bridging open work permit. But the bridging open work permit is only for specific programs. And so temporary policies aren't part of the program, the listed programs for the bridging program. And so if there is going to be something around that, it'll have to be something new that IRCC, like another new temporary policy that IRCC will announce at some point so that people can continue working. I mean, I do expect that they will be something because, again, we are dealing with people who are here in Canada. We are dealing with people who IRCC has defined as being essential. So I would be surprised if we don't see something later on. But as of right now, the bridging open would generally not be the option.
Thank you. There is a question about what is the difference between major and minor groups?
So when we look at occupation codes, it's just the way that they have it set up. And so when you're looking at the Annex B, you want to go down to the actual 4-digit code, and that will be what's listed in the actual public policy. When they're talking about major groups, it's a higher classification of all the different 4-digit codes that are included in there.
Thank you. And I have a question. Will IRCC accept both the IELTS and CELPIP academic and generic tests?
Unfortunately, no. So they're only looking at the general version of the IELTS and the CELPIP tests.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a few other questions, which is not related to the new policies, but rather about immigration in general. So I think that's about it. Thank you. Zia, would you like to add anything else before we close this evening's session?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think it is really about being prepared, right? This is a very unique and a very exciting opportunity for individuals who are here in Canada and who are able to apply. So my best advice is just be prepared for May 6th. We are going to see, it is going to be a little bit of a hectic day, I would assume, just because it's going to be a rush to get your applications in. So what you want to do in advance as much as possible is have forms, have your documents, have everything prepared so that you're ready to upload and submit your applications as early as possible.
Thank you very much. I have actually a few more questions that I just received.
Sure.
The participants are actually asking about the link to the Annex A and Annex B. Is that possible for you to share?
Yeah, we can share that on here.
And in the meantime, I'm going to ask a few more questions, if that's okay.
Of course.
So for a PhD student who has Express entry profile at the moment, could they be picked up or selected, I believe, for this program, through this program?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing, again, this goes back to students who are here, as long as you qualify under, I'm assuming then you would be looking more at the essential workers, or if you've already completed a program in the past. So for example, if you've done your master's in the past, as long as you meet one of the requirements, it doesn't preclude you from applying if you're currently a student right now.
Thank you very much. And what if someone applies without IELTS scores?
You won't. Basically, from what we've heard so far from IRCC, they will not be accepting applications without language tests. So even if you do submit it, it would be refused.
Thank you.
So I've put the link in there. Basically, at the bottom of the link, you'll see the Annex A and the Annex B. And so that goes through all the different occupations that IRCC will be, that is part of Annex B for the public policy for essential workers.
Thank you. And there's another question about whether IRCC evaluates these applications, or they're just going to select the first come, based on first come, first serve.
Well, they have stated that they'll be accepting 90,000, right? On the English speaking side, of course. And so when they accept those, then it'll be going through an evaluation to make sure that candidates actually qualify, right? So when an application is received, then it goes into processing. Officers evaluate to say, does this person meet the requirements of the particular program that they've applied under? If they do, then they get granted, and they pass the background checks, and then they'd be granted the permanent residence.
Thank you. Another question, I think what they mean is that, do we have to apply? Does the application have to come from the applicant, or the IRCC actually has the data information, or they file these applications?
No, you have to file your application. So you have to go online and apply for permanent residence.
And they're asking about the form and application process. Where do I get that, and where are the links?
So that will all be available on IRCC's website. Right now, it hasn't been disclosed. It hasn't been released as yet. So everyone is still waiting to get the full guide, which will have all the application forms and the document list. At this point, again, all I can say is take a look at other applications, take a look at other forms that IRCC requires for permanent residence applications, and that would be the best way to prepare at this point, just because they haven't released the specific ones for this program.
Thank you very much. Another question is about whether or not they can hire a representative to submit their form, their application.
So yes, of course, for any application with immigration, you can always hire a representative to assist you in applying for permanent residence.
And whether or not I can track how many applicants have been accepted. Is there a way for us to check that? Yeah,
so again, this is because IRCC hasn't yet released exactly what this process is going to look like. We only have a little bit of information as to what is going to happen on May 6th. From the conversations I've had and from what we've been told so far, there is going to be a very different portal or a separate portal to apply for this particular program. And through that portal, there will be a count to say how many applications have been received. And so that will be tracking when or how close they are to meeting the caps for each of the different streams.
Mm-hmm. A very similar question to one of the previous questions is that if 90,000 applications have been received, but some of them are incomplete or do not qualify, are they going to consider the remainder, or like what is the selection criteria basically?
Yeah, so this goes back to that counter, right? So as we were just saying right now, they're supposed to be counting and stopping to accept applications once they hit the cap in each of the different streams. And so the idea is that they're not keeping an inventory of additional applications beyond that. Now, whether or not they decide to reopen this, if they see that a large portion of individuals don't qualify and aren't able to get permanent residence, we don't know at this time. Right. And so that'll be something to wait and see if it does happen. But as of right now, the idea is that they'll accept applications up till they reach the maximum for each of the programs, and then they'll stop accepting them. So there won't be any additional inventory. So where they have applicants that don't qualify, there's nothing to fill that spot as of right now.
Thank you. If they have an invitation to apply for PR already, does this policy affect their application?
No, so that's completely separate, right? So getting an invitation to apply is basically looking again at the express entry stream, so qualifying under one of the other federal programs. And so basically that's a route to permanent residence on its own. So having an ITA doesn't at all affect this program, right? So you can decide, do you want to apply for permanent residence through express entry, or do you want to try these public policies? You can do both even. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from applying through both.
How do you suggest that one should get ready and prepare all the documents for this application?
So look at other applications, right? Look at other permanent residence routes, and really that's the best way, I think, to prepare at this point. With express entry applications, so for example, Canadian Experience Class, we see documents that, like the medicals that are required, police certificates are required. I think that may be a part of this as well, because again, if IRCC is trying to make decisions and to process these by the end of the year, it will be important for them to have these sort of documents up front. Other documents that we've seen in, for example, provincial nominee applications are like ID documents, right? So your birth certificate, for example, all of these can and may be a part of this application. But until IRCC releases the full list, we can't say definitively, right? And so really what you can do is prepare yourself, have everything ready, and so whenever they do open and whenever they do release the guide, it's not a mad hunt to try and get these documents because you already prepared. You're ahead of everyone.
Thank you very much. It's about international student stream. So they've already graduated and they have been offered the co-op by their current employer. Does that count, or can they apply through the international student route?
As long as they've completed their program of study and they're currently working, then yes, they should be able to apply through this program. But again, look very carefully at the specific requirements, right? You want to see when it is that you finished your program. You want to look at, are you currently working right now? The good thing is that, again, there's nothing that says you have to be working in a certain occupation or you have to have a certain amount of work experience already completed. Right? You can start your position May 1st and apply on May 6th, right? There's nothing that says, okay, you have to have a year or a month even of work experience, as long as you meet the other criteria for that international student stream.
Thank you. I have actually a question. I was not monitoring the chat, but I'm going to take a few questions from the chat. We only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to take as many as I can. I've already applied through spousal program. So can I submit an application through this if I qualify?
For sure. Like, you definitely can look at applying through multiple categories for your permanent residence. Like I said earlier, though, you will only get permanent residence once. So it's whichever one then gets processed first.
Thank you very much. Why type of evidence of physical presence is anticipated?
So hard to comment on that because, again, it will depend, one, on your circumstances, and two, what IRCC puts in the document checklist. But again, you really want to make sure that you're able to demonstrate that you meet the eligibility criteria. So there's a variety of ways that can be done. What IRCC is specifically going to ask for in that application and on that document checklist, we don't know right now.
Thank you. And does the 1 year or 1 year equivalent count when it's under a study permit?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Does the 1 year or 1 year equivalent count when it is under a study permit?
1 year or 1 year. So if
Yes.
the work if we're talking about work experience for essential occupations, yes, if you're working while you're on a study permit, it's still authorized work. And so again, you could qualify for the essential worker stream as long as you have that year of experience.
So if they have been here on a student permit, but they have worked part-time as an essential worker, could they qualify for this?
Yep, definitely. Definitely, as long as they have the year and the 1,560 hours.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Zia. If you have any parting comments, other than that, we would like to end the session.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for attending, everybody. And I hope your questions were answered tonight. I wish you all the best with your applications. Have a great night. Yali Madad.
Yali Madad.